Hey, Paul.
Hey Fab,
How's it going?
good. You?
Good, good. Can't complain. Can't complain. Um, all right. I want to talk about CRMs today.
What's a
And
CRM?
that's a good question. So that's actually a good question. Um, it's a customer relationship management tool. So it really allows you to manage all the relationships that you have with your clients. And I'd like the emphasis, the all the relationships that you have with your clients. Um, so CRMs have been around for a long time, right? The first editions were kind of on premise. You had to install them on servers inside the company. And then Salesforce came along and said, no, we can move everything to the cloud. And then there's been a whole bunch of CRMs that have arisen since then. Obviously, everybody knows at this point that I work with HubSpot, but there's others like Pipedrive, Zoho CRM, Microsoft Dynamics, which I think was
Yep.
an original on-premise, now in the cloud. Probably still have an on-premise version. What else is there? I mean, there's a whole bunch of other smaller ones that I probably haven't heard of. But at the end of the day, a CRM is a tool, right? And like a wrench or a car, right? Like you could buy a car, but if you don't know how to drive it, it's not going to look pretty in your driveway. But that's about it. Same thing with the CRM, right? It's a tool, and a lot of people. There's a lot of things that I see are counterproductive in there because a well set up CRM really helps you scale, grow revenue, and all that fun stuff. And CRMs that are not implemented properly are actually do the reverse, right? And because so I want to talk to you. What are some of the common pitfalls, mistakes, whatever you want to call them, that you see in CRMs today? I don't
Well,
have my own, obviously, but I like to hear
yeah,
yours.
no, well, thank you. You're very polite. So it's interesting, Fab, because I think um, there's two types of pitfalls. The first pitfall is the person who goes out and buys a shiny object, so they'll buy a Bentley and they'll leave it in the driveway and they don't know how to drive it, right? And then there's the kind of people who buy a Honda Civic and try to pull a huge trailer with it. So they're people who don't maximize what can be used with the CRM, and then there are those that buy CRM that maybe doesn't do what is necessary for them. So
Mm-hmm.
the real pitfalls that I see from my perspective as a consultant, as a coach, as a trainer, as a facilitator, is that people don't take the time to really integrate it properly and understand how it can help them and use the tools properly. But really, from my perspective, what that mostly means is they don't set up a proper sales process and they don't use the CRM as what I consider to be the best thing. The CRM is your sales assistant to remind you to do all the things you need to do as you move forward through your sale. This being said, a lot of sales managers also don't know how to use the CRM, and a lot of owners don't know how to use the CRM. And if you properly integrate a CRM, it should be just as advantageous for the company as it is for the rep who's using the CRM, who's doing
Mm-hmm.
the activities that are being recorded in the CRM. So the biggest shortfalls usually is that it's a complicated tool and that people only use a certain percentage of it. And those that do use it to its fullest capacity and implement it properly, well, it's just a wonderful tool. And often people don't take the time to properly learn how to use the CRM. They just, get the SaaS and they stick it up there. And
Yeah.
let's face it, not all CRMs are made the same, and not all CRMs do the same thing. Some CRMs need a lot more back end help to get you to use it properly. Some CRMs even have, in larger companies, have a super user internally who is necessary to continuously tweak stages or tweak the CRM. Some large enterprise companies will require that, and then it works well because you've got your dude doing or your dudette doing everything that needs to be done. And then often small companies, like, I'm a solopreneur, right? So are you. Um, I use obviously HubSpot. Fab wouldn't talk to me if I didn't. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I use HubSpot, but it's still very useful to me. Do I use it? Do I need a super, complex enterprise version? Of course not. I'm
Yeah.
alone. A lot of the information, it's a simple process. Now, what is also unfortunate is a lot of people um, don't take the time to master the APIs and to connect them properly,
Hmm.
and don't realize that that investment of time will help them move forward. So the shortfalls of using a CRM are you're not using it properly, um, and you're not taking the time to really integrate it into what you do. Some people say, I don't have time to use it properly. Well, actually, it's the other way around.
Yeah.
You use it properly, it'll create efficiency in your process and help you long term. Might be a little bit of investment of time at first, but afterwards it'll really greatly help you to move forward and get things done in a better way. Sorry, that was a really long-winded answer, as usual.
That's right. No, as usual, there's a lot of good stuff in there, and I mean, I think you kind of you identified one issue that I've noticed as well is that there's a difficulty, especially when for owners or co-founders or whatever, like uh, for them to switch from like I've been running my business to I need to scale. And when you're running your business, they're a bit like us, right? Like they might have a tool, they might not, but it's all in their mind. They know how to run their business, right? And then they have to making that shift from I know how to get stuff done and this is how I log things to wait, I need to start building for scale because I'm hiring people, and so on and so forth. That becomes difficult. And so that's usually like when I come in, I see a lot of that, right? It's just like a not well implemented CRM because it was implemented, quote unquote, um, without any strategic component, whether it's like a sales consultant like yourself, or they have a documented process internally. Like it's just kind of put in, right? And then it just becomes not useful. And I can see where it comes from, right? Like the owner, that's what they were doing. They were just quote unquote putting it in, right? That's all they needed. Like you and me, I'm sure you're not maybe updating all your opportunities in the moment that things happen and you're not doing pipeline reviews with yourself. So, maybe some deals are you're late on updating some information. I know for sure I am, but if I were to hire a salesperson, I would have to work on that process beforehand, or at least as they're being hired, because and I think that's one of the bigger pitfalls that I see. Right, is like there's just no strategy behind it. It's just like we're just continuing doing the same old whatever all over the place, and then nobody understands really the value of it. Right, there's no because they're not getting data, they're not getting information, they're not getting insights, they're not getting anything. It's just a place where things happen, and that's about it.
Yep, I agree with you, and that's where I think there's, let's say you could go back from the start and you send people to the CRM and sales university. What you'd say to them is, what I would say to them is, look, if you're trying to sell something to someone, what's the purpose of your sale, right? What are you trying to do? Of course, you're trying to sell your product. And then I'd go back to the whole consultative thing. You're trying to help them achieve something. Well, if
Yeah,
you're going to try to help your client achieve something, there's a flow to the process of trying to sell something to someone. And
yeah,
if you can identify all of those stages and all the milestones, that's even better. And if you have a place where it's automated in that you're moving things forward and it's reminding you of what you need to do, well, that's even better. And if there's
yeah,
a place where there's all of these reports that are printed or created where your managers can go look at it to help you guys to decide where you need training, that's even better.
yeah,
You know? And if there's a
yeah,
place where when you sell something, it goes directly into your order system or your manufacturing system, that's even better. So, but and that's where the advantages are huge. And that's why,
yeah,
between you and I, 95% of businesses have CRMs, right?
yeah.
Um, is that the number? Do you know? You probably know better than I would. What's the percentage of?
I don't know. It's pretty high. I mean, it's hard to tell. I mean, I usually find that maybe some more enterprise style companies like that sell like really large, that are smaller but they sell large contracts. don't have a CRM just because there's so few opportunities that it's easier to keep track of in like project management software or an Excel spreadsheet. Um, but usually, if you're looking at a large company, regardless of their average sale, and any newer company, most of them have some sort of a CRM
Yeah.
in place. Yeah, I mean it's increasingly rare to see somebody that's still running off of Excel. That happens, but it's increasingly rare.
Yeah. I think you're right. It is increasingly rare. You know, I was trying to think of a good analogy for to look at a CRM, because I find analogies often help you put it into perspective. And the best analogy I can think of is, you know, if you have a Microsoft Office or Gmail, some people are really messy at keeping their emails and they don't have any kind of logic to it, right? So it's a sort of smaller microcosm of the way that their CRMs work. Their CRMs make
Mm-hmm.
no sense either. And it's not, you know, let's face it, whether you have HubSpot, Pipedrive, or Salesforce, if you're totally messy in the way you maintain your CRM, it's not going to help you very much. Kind of
Yeah.
like your inbox, you know, if you have a messy way of using it, it's not going to help you. Same thing with LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But a CRM has so much power. It has so much potential for power that it's amazing what it can help you with. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where you need to really um, look at that. So let me ask you this. Let me flip it on its back a little bit. Um, how does one go about making sure that they're maximizing the usage of their CRM?
That's a good question. I think at the end of the day, there's buy-in from leadership. I think if the leader, the co-founder, founder, the CEO just doesn't believe in it, they're undervaluing the value of sales enablement. They're undervaluing the value of reports and all that. CRM adoption is going to be pretty slim, just because they're not going to have a tendency to go towards it. But assume that they've come around and they realize it. I I like to kind of go backwards, where it's what's the main reason why you have your system, right, in place, or what's the main reason why you want. And 9.9 times out of 10, it's like to forecast revenue, right? That's usually, when you boil it down to everything, that's really what sales leaders and business leaders want. And then you could go from there, right? I think that's usually where I like to start. I mean, even though sometimes that's the end product, right? Well, to be able to forecast, we need to do A, B, C, D, E, F, X, Y, Z type of thing. But if you start with a goal in mind, that usually facilitates, because when they start getting their weekly forecast report by email, then they're like, okay, now I'm starting to see. And then they can, like, oh, why is our forecast so low? And then they can start digging into, okay, well, deals aren't being logged properly. Okay, why aren't deals being logged properly? Like, they can start digging into. I think that the mistake that sometimes people make is that they focus too much on the tactical. So, and there's some tactical stuff that you need to worry about to get it set up, but they worry too much about, which properties, what information are we collecting at which stage, and there's not enough information on why are we even doing this in the first place. That's what I
Yeah.
found usually resonates the most.
So it's a great answer. And I don't know if you agree with me, and you're allowed to disagree. I think that people who put in a CRM uniquely to forecast revenue are doomed for failure.
Yeah, they are. They are, because at the end of the day, well, they are and they're not, because they are if that's really, they have a very narrow mind of
Well, that's what I
focus.
mean. If your
Any
only
focus.
goal is, I don't care about anything else, I want to be able to forecast revenue, then
Yeah.
you're asking a bunch of people to enter stuff just so you can forecast revenue. Well, your CRM is going to be not liked, and because it doesn't act as a helper to those salespeople.
Yeah. To me, that's it. If you allow it to become, what's the word? If you allow that as a milestone, or the gateway drug, so to speak, into being like, oh wait, there's so much more we can do, and allow yourself to, like, use why your forecasts aren't accurate, for example, as conversation starters with your sales team, like, why aren't we logging information, so on and so forth. I think then there's a key to success. You're completely right. If you look at it and then the forecasts are not great, so you're like, oh, whatever, and then you just go back to your old Excel or whatever, like that's, you're doomed to fail, like you say. I think, at the beginning we talked about like it is hard to transition from the scrappy, like just me myself doing my stuff, or one salesperson doing my stuff, to like scalable. Um, and the other factor of success, I would say, you have to embrace some sort of a process behind it, right? Like a CRM is a system that allows you to manage your relationships with your clients and your prospects. And for that, there's process, right? Like the second you start taking away processing and everybody doing whatever they need to do, then that's when you lose the functionality, right?
Yeah.
Because then, oh, well, Paul doesn't log his emails, and like, Catherine just logs her deals when they're about to get one. And, like everybody's doing their own thing. Like there's really no point of that, in having all that, paying
Yeah.
for all those
I mean,
tools.
if you onboard someone and you don't even give them access to their inbox to write emails, you see, you got to do it through the CRM. It might work, or if you
Yeah.
say you're not allowed to use a phone unless you're going through your CRM, it might work. But if you're not helping that individual in the achievement of their objectives, it's probably that's to me when I'm speaking to CRM with people and they're not into it and they don't want to use it, it's usually because they don't see the advantage and they just see it as a big brother tool. And
Yeah.
if you're using your CRM as a big brother tool, that's terrible. But if you're using it just to forecast revenue, that's like the second worst thing because
Yeah.
you're not seeing it as the advantage.
Yeah, and that's what I think. And I think that's the big challenge. I mean, to me, I mean, obviously, I'm biased potentially, but to me, if we're in 2023 when we're recording this, about halfway through the year, and you're still reticent in terms of using data to improve, uh, that's a red flag for me, right? If you're there and it's still difficult and your sales reps are reticent because they feel it's big brother and all those things, I'm like, oh boy, there's some red flags there. Because I mean, we have the data. It's not like in the past where the data just wasn't available, right? You didn't know how many calls it took to be able to book an appointment, right? Just because there was no way of tracking it. So you just kind of assumed that Paul was making the calls that he said he was making, right? Like, I mean, obviously there was maybe ways of keeping track with sheets and stuff like that, but we have the data, and it allows you to use that data to improve your results.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting because it's a debate that's evolved, and I find to look at it again from a different perspective. The salespeople who understand that it's an assistant for them do really well.
Mm.
Um, the salespeople who see it as big brother usually aren't doing well anyways.
Yeah,
So there's some of that too. So from a sales perspective, if you're really reticent to use a CRM, you might just have a problem and be a lazy salesperson, right? And you don't want your boss to be knowing what you do. But to the other extreme, it might just be holding you back because it's not being used properly.
yeah.
But I've seen a few places that use the CRM properly, and it's just amazing what it can do.
Oh
Um,
yeah. I mean, and on that note, I think one part that we didn't talk about yet is that, because you mentioned the debate evolving. CRMs at the initially were sales tools, right? They were there to help salespeople manage their relationships and then track their opportunities and all that, and making sure that nothing really fell through the cracks. Uh, More and more, what I'm realizing, like a bigger pitfall, is that that's changed, where it's not no longer just a sales tool. I think to scale and grow a company, and I get there's maybe some industries where that's maybe not the case. It can't just be sales driven anymore. That's just not working as well. Um, Scale means incorporating customer service, incorporating account management, account operating marketing, stuff like that. These are all anything that touches the customer needs to be included in your CRM because it's one thing to say like, okay, it takes us 16 calls to get like a first appointment, but it's quite the other to be like, well, how what's the value of our marketing efforts, or how satisfied are our customers and all that. And if that's not all combined in one system, then you might have a great sales tool, a really well implemented pipe drive, for example, but you're still missing out probably a 2/3 of all your customer interactions out there. What do you think
Yeah,
about that?
yeah. No, I agree with you. I think that's a very good point. If you're not using it to the full of its capacity, but I think it boils down, Fab. It really boils back down to let's put it on us. It's for us, the consultants and the CRM experts, to make sure that our clients understand how it's going to benefit them, and
Yeah.
we probably need to convince them, because if you don't know what it can do, well, how can you know what it's going to do? So we need to make sure that we're properly asking the questions to help them move forward. That'll make them understand how properly using their CRM is going to benefit them tremendously in achieving their own goals.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it is on us, and it's not always on the. I mean, some customers get it, obviously, or some companies get it, but it is on us to ask better questions. Like, what are you trying to accomplish here at the end of the day, and to challenge them. Like forecasting, great. Let's work on forecasting, but but it can't just be beyond that. And let's talk about what else there is and what are your other challenges. Like salespeople, I don't know what they're doing, or I'm having a hard time onboarding new salespeople because we don't have any information on what's working, what's not working, or we're spending a lot of money on marketing and we don't know what this how if that's working or not, and so on and so forth. We don't know. We don't have a defined process to like for upsells and cross sells and renewals and all that stuff. And when you have those conversations, I think you can lead to a better use of their tools.
Yes, I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. So I don't know. Have we addressed this subject properly?
I think so. I mean, obviously, we can go into the nitty gritty of like their data is not clean and all that. But I think I like where the conversation headed, where it's maybe a bit more less symptomatic and more deeper in terms of what's going on, and kind of the notes I took or the recaps is like there's as you mentioned, there's really two types of big pitfalls. Is the people that don't maximize, right? They'll buy the massive enterprise version of a tool, but all they're doing is like wanting to log emails type of thing. Um, and and the big danger with that is that we get so comfortable, we get so stuck in our ways, right? So we're paying for this big tool, but all we're doing is this, and then it's hard to see the forest for the trees. So, and then the second type of pitfall is the reverse almost, right? They have like a big complex process and they're getting a really simple tool, a simple version of the tool that just doesn't really allow them to do everything. And there's still a lot of manual data entry. There's a lot of mistakes. There's a lot of, it's just preventing them from growing because they just don't have the right tool. Um, and, I think what I also like that we mentioned was that, uh, or what I've seen anyway is this transition from scrappy, just a business owner or maybe one salesperson to scalable is sometimes very difficult for people. Like where just writing it down on a piece of paper and sending off a Slack message that we got a new order is good when you're starting out, but at some point that doesn't work anymore. And you need to shift and you need to put value into the process and the data hygiene and all that stuff to be able to make that work.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I think that wraps it up well. I mean, I think we could go on for hours, and you're right. We get into the nitty gritty. Like you said, you know, data issues. There's a lot of specific things we could get into, but I think you've got to look at the high end level of what it is that's really going on to
Yeah.
convince someone that they should be using a CRM.
Yeah.
Yeah, or sort of properly using their CRM.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's a tool. It's a sales enablement tool. It has a lot of data to offer to deliver insights that can make you really help you make great decisions and allow you to really view your full customer journey and to
Yeah.
seeing where issues are. I think that's, at the end of the day, that's what the tool's for.
Yeah.
Cool.
Perfect.
Thank you very much. We will
Thank
see
you, Fab.
you next time.
See you next time.
Take care. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.